Okay, so I'm here today to talk to you about personal data and privacy in a mobile context. The collection and use of personal data is increasingly under the spotlight for two main reasons. One, which we've been discussing a little bit just now, is about IT issues faced when managing and processing and analyzing big data. And secondly, the personal data and privacy issues faced when navigating regulation, consumer attitudes, and the OTT competition. This presentation focuses on the second of these. Excuse me. It's a bit delayed. Right. Sorry about that. So here we've got a slide which is got some very topical issues attached to it today, with a major research house and mobile operator facing privacy infringement allegations today at a meeting with the Open Rights Group at the Houses of Parliament. My first point here on the left doesn't need labouring. A gold rush mentality towards personal data could damage privacy opportunities by upsetting users, and we'll come on to more of that about that later. This diagram illustrates how personal data is used by a mobile operator. Firstly, number one, data is used internally only without disclosure to improve and optimize operator services. Secondly, data products and services can be sold without disclosure of the actual data, such as location or telco ad solutions where personal data is anonymized or isn't actually shared outside the company. And thirdly, data is disclosed to third-party service providers under the operator's privacy policy and terms and conditions, allowing for the full release of personal information to companies such as ad networks, research houses, and third-party data brokers. We don't have time today to discuss the full range of mobile opportunities that I've plotted here in this slide, but you'll recognize some of the categories with monetization potential as location, as we all know, advertising, privacy and ID management, and social research. These opportunities are enabled through contractual models, shown here in bold, which we have plotted against a data disclosure and consumer trust axis. Let me quickly go through the models from what I might say are the least consumer-friendly to the most consumer-friendly contractual models. The least friendly being contracts of adhesion. That's a horrible legal term, which talks about the standard form contracts. These are the like it or lump it terms and conditions and privacy policies that are in the small print at the back of your contract with a mobile phone operator, and buried quite often deep in website publishers' privacy policies. Then the next most friendly, arguably, is anonymized data. Things like location analytics, a lot of which are being offered now by the mobile networks to the retail industry and many others. These at least attempt to remove personal identifying information, but there is still a lack of standards and specifications for going about this. Interestingly, a group of MIT scientists recently showed that re-identification of most of a carrier's anonymized user data set could be achieved by adding just 4 new location data points. So that's showing up a security weakness potentially in that particular model. But also we can move on to personal data services, another contractual model that provides services using data, but where it doesn't allow the data outside the company. Clients are brought to the service rather than the personal data exported to the client. This is a technique used by Facebook and Google extensively, and is one reason for them unifying their data use and privacy policies. Then finally, what we might call the most friendly consumer contractual model is, of course, user opt-in. The only contractual model currently to recognize an ongoing relationship with the consumer and provide an element of consumer control and choice. All of these contractual models are obviously viable business choices depending on context and should be continued to be exploited. But the one-sided nature of corporate written contracts, that's the like it or lump it contracts in the small print, are fast becoming under the media and regulatory spotlight, driving the privacy market forward as an opportunity. So let's move on to challenges. We don't have time to discuss the major IT issues of big data, and that is something that may well be covered a little more by other people. So here we'll look into the key market forces that challenge the collection and use of personal data. Market forces that challenge mobile's ability to monetize data directly, but which may actually drive an opportunity for mobile operators to monetize personal data through permission-based, user-controlled channels that leverage privacy management. The key market forces are, of course, the consumer's hardening attitude to the collection of their data and the tightening of regulation over personal data collection. So let's go into a little bit more about the consumer attitudes. And they are hardening. Around 2/3 of the internet population across 11 countries surveyed in Ovum's Consumer Insights survey said they would block tracking if they could. The figure was even higher at 68% if the tracking was by a social network, but only 62% if tracking was by a normal website. We can see where this intention to block is coming from too. 50% of the internet population believed internet companies were not honest, and only 14% believed they were honest, and the rest, well, they weren't sure. Even though approaching half of the internet population believed that internet companies were reliant on consumers' personal data to survive, the majority of respondents still intended to block tracking all the same. Based on this Ovum survey and the findings of our Personal Data Futures report, Ovum predicts the turbulence for the internet economy is going to slowly emerge as more and more consumers block the collection of their information and become invisible in data terms. Excuse me. If we take just first couple of these points here, we can see how regulation is tightening also. The World Economic Forum identified personal data as the essential currency for running the internet and a new asset class, as they called it, crucial to the economy and society. It recognized also the importance of, and I quote, developing a balanced personal data ecosystem which is vitally important to improving the state of the world. Admittedly, that last bit is a little bit fluffy, but the point is made. New European e-privacy proposals also, as Google could tell you at this point, plan to introduce a clear, distinguishable right to object to data collection. They plan to improve the right to be forgotten, which provides for erasure, rectification, or blocking of personal data on request. The right to data portability, a copy of their data in a commonly used format that allows for further use. And this is something that in the UK is already being pushed forward with the government's My Data programme. So the EU are tightening the rules under which data can be collected and used, as well as the consumer's rights post-collection. The squeeze on the incumbent cookie-based personal data pipeline has started. So let's look at the implications for mobile. Mobile are behind the OTT players in the big data gold rush. That's obvious. But mobile still has a great data asset to leverage. Mobile operators were relatively untouched by privacy screw-ups. Were being the operative word, given who's at the Houses of Parliament today getting themselves in trouble, probably. The Googles of this world are at last under the regulatory pressure. So the playing field is starting to be leveled up. Where they can, users are starting to use blocking tools to go dark in data terms. The current cookie-based personal data pipeline is being squeezed between tightening regulation and hardening consumer attitudes, and this is happening in most markets in the world. Not all, but many. Mobile, as an industry, now has the option of befriending their users rather than fracking their data. Fracking is a term that I thought brought up the idea of the way cookies work and how they extract data from the user. Mobile now has that option, and there is a game-changing opportunity for mobile to help build and gatekeep a new user-controlled personal data ecosystem. One that involves communication instead of calculation, and that deploys relationships-first strategy instead of analytics-first strategy. We have to remember that all of this big data, a lot of this big data, of course, some of it will come from the IoT, Internet of Things, but a lot of it will come from the individual, from people, from a person. They are the source of big data. And if we don't look after the source, it will dry up. Let's have a closer look, perhaps, at how this new ecosystem could look. If enough users blocked the cookie or code-based fracking of their data and placed their ID in personal data vaults, controlled by a trusted privacy gatekeeper, the privacy economy would be boosted, and mobile operators and other mobile services could exploit this opportunity. This slide shows the incumbent corporate-controlled ecosystem at the bottom and a new user-controlled ecosystem developing at the top. A system where users block more and more access to their data, potentially even starting a privacy war with the data collectors. Users' personal information is released to the big data industry, and end-user companies, whether they're ad networks, advertisers, research firms, or even the government, have to access that personal data via the personal data vaults that exist on something you might call a personal data exchange, a platform anyway. User data is released according to contracts adopted by the user and also controlled by the user. Money is made, as far as the mobile industry is concerned, through churn reduction and growing subscriber bases, the sales of privacy products and services, and also revenue share with industries wanting the user data from this new ecosystem. And as more and more consumers become invisible, more and more consumers will be releasing their data through a new system, a new privacy ecosystem. So other than the World Economic Forum, What organizations and companies are running with this new personal data ecosystem? Actually, not many. No one sizable. There is a privacy economy, and there are a lot of startups in that economy. There is a lot of work going on in trying to lay out guidelines and standards from various organizations which have not really reached critical mass as yet. Not only that, but both corporate and consumer-controlled ecosystems do need better guidelines and even specifications. So let's have a look at what where we might need to look to actually review and do some work on that subject. Many elements in the personal data ecosystem need looking at, and here are just a few examples. Not all need developing from scratch, perhaps, but the OMA could look at adopting these as best-of-breed options. The de-identification standards and specifications that are used by, for example, a mobile network to anonymize their data before selling it as a location-based service to retail and other clients. The standards and specifications for that de-identification are, well, they don't really exist at the moment. So there is obviously a case for looking at the aggregation algorithms and the de-identification methods that those companies use. ID management and verification systems, as mobile starts to get involved, now is the time to review the requirements for those specifications. Personal data vaults. The security specifications of new products will need looking at. And if these personal data vaults rest on a platform, then that platform, whether it's called a personal data exchange or whatever it may be, will also perhaps need reviewing in terms of specifications and best practice guidelines. And there are a whole host of products that I haven't actually got time to talk to you about today that the personal data ecosystem, the privacy market, can actually sell to us. One of them, for example, might be a service procurement engine where you send out or post a consumer request for proposal, an RFP, that sits on your personal data vault and is accessed by people that you agree to accessing, and they will do all the hard work of searching for the exact product or service you're looking for rather than you doing it on the internet. All of these elements could benefit from tighter guidelines. And finally, a word of warning from Eric Schmidt. Thick skin will be a necessity for technology companies in the coming years of the digital age, because they will find themselves beset by public concerns over privacy, security, and user protections. I believe all that to be true, but I also think he's only looking at one side of the coin. Let me rewrite that with some Ovum spin. Sensitivity will be a necessity for technology companies in the coming months of the digital age, because they will find themselves rediscovering that the public do not wish to be the product, and will redesign themselves as relationships-first companies that understand the competitive advantage in friending people rather than fracking data. I believe both of these quotes will hold true in the future. Thank you very much for listening.